It says you're live. I can't. It looks like it's all good.
I'm getting message. I've said Sophie's trying to fix it. So
Yes,
and
yeah, good.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, a couple of comments on the minutes of the meeting from me, if I may, please. The previous minutes were taken by the assistant clerk at the time, and I did make comments on the minutes because I felt that minute number 5 about the outsourced charity arrangement didn't really capture what was said at the meeting, because it says 2 members expressed concern. I think virtually every member expressed concern. And so I've said, I've the minutes, the comments that I made, and I'll pass them again to the town clerk.
That's the thing. With all these adaptations to these minutes, shall we defer the signing them off? And everybody wants to email me any changes that they feel,
Okay.
because otherwise we're going to end up with a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy with that proposal.
All right. So the proposal is to defer the
We've
minutes.
got a vote on deferring them, so.
Okay. All in agreement on that?
Sorry, so who proposed?
On deferring,
Councillor Carter
deferring them.
to defer the minutes.
And
Happy to
seconded?
second.
Okay.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is for public participation. I don't see any members of the public here, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the charity establishment. Members to receive an update on the status of the application for registration made to the Charity Commission.
I received an email, I'm afraid it was too late to put into a report, but I received an email from Girlings on Tuesday, so these went out on Friday. Yeah, so that's yesterday. Basically, it's a standard contact email from the Charity Commission. This is through Girlings. I would expect them to have to look into the detail given history. I suspect we will hear substantively back in the new year. The email says, thank you for your application for registration. This is an update. We've looked at your application to see if we can make an early registration. As this was not possible, it's now waiting in a queue for a more detailed review. It may take on average 16 weeks to contact you regarding your application. The application will be processed as soon as a case officer becomes available. At that point, we will assess whether we need more information to enable us to decide if your organisation is a charity. We will contact you at the stage as needed. We understand that delay can be frustrating. We are working as quickly as possible to progress all applications in the order with which we receive them. It says seeking priority handling. There are sort of some in which we could, but I don't think we qualify, basically. Vulnerable beneficiaries, amount of funding being at risk, so we just have to sit and wait.
Can I just clarify, so what date was that message from the Charity Commission, so we know when the 16 weeks starts?
1st of December.
The 1st of December, so 4 months.
So could I ask, did it say that 16 weeks, did it say a minimum of 16 weeks or maximum?
That's when they assign a case officer.
So that is really the
I thought
minimum.
they said it typically takes 16
So
weeks.
the minimum is 16
It
weeks.
takes 16 weeks for us to contact you after submitting your application. That's when your application will be processed as soon as a case officer becomes available. So they'll really only look at it then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're in for several months.
But it's registered and it's in.
Yeah, and we've received a copy of the application is part of the papers that were distributed as part of the meeting. Councillor Black.
Yeah, sorry, I'm new to all of this, so please apologise if this has been covered before. But I had a look at the first page of the application. I was a little bit surprised under special circumstances, the second paragraph. It is noted that as regards goods and services administrative support will be provided by the town council as a trustee at no cost to the charity. However, I'm looking at section 10, which we'll be coming on to, the action log. It says that we will be appointing a clerk to deal with this. I'm a bit confused. Why would Sandwich Town Council be doing the admin work for a pretty wealthy charity, which means that our taxpayers are paying for this? If I've got it wrong, please, but I did say I was new to this, but reading that's what it says to me. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that this doesn't reflect the actual intention to keep this charity at arm's length from the council. And I'm not too sure how that has actually crept in there.
So I'm not completely wrong there. Okay.
If I may, it's just that this committee, this charity, will appoint its own clerk.
That's what I understood.
Yes, so it should be any charge to the town.
So it's not, so the administrative function of the charity will be provided and paid for by the charity,
For the charity.
which is what I thought was the case, but this is a bit confusing.
Yeah, we do need to formally agree that, but I haven't heard anybody arguing otherwise. So it hasn't been formally agreed that that's what we'll do.
Okay, I did say I'm new to this.
Yeah, and at the moment, the council is providing the support as a result.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we can just note that, please, thank you. And then if we move on to the second part of this agenda item, because this 16 weeks actually gives us a window for members to discuss the practical steps needed for the administration of the charity, the resources, the procedures, the consultants, the communication methods, and the other working arrangements. Because there's a lot to do to be able to hit the ground running, and we've already talked about the trustee and the management committee. What is the terms of reference, the codes of conduct and all of that for both of those committees? If we've talked about employing a clerk, so we're going to become an employer. So we need to have all of the processes and procedures, contracts of employment, security, clearance, and all of the references, all of the health and safety policies and all of those types of things for our employee. Then we would need to have all of the administrative things, an office if we're going to be separate from the town council. Where is this employee going to be based? And then associated with that is the lease or the renting of that office and setting up utility accounts. And so there's a lot of work about being an employer, the charity being an employer. Then the actual administration of the business, having insurance, having an accountant, having a solicitor, all of these people or organisations need to be procured over the next few months, so that, or in anticipation of charitable status being granted. And then we need to run the grant award process and have our arrangements for meeting with the local organisations and so forth. So there's a lot of work to do. So please, let's have some ideas as to how this can all be dealt with.
Yeah, I'm involved with two other charities. One is this Port Haven Commissioner. They have a clerk. You pay her by the hour. She works where they actually have their meetings here, and she actually does her office work from home. That's by the hour. I'm also involved with, there is another charity that the same clerk is involved with, and they do it exactly the same. She books by the hour, so it's quarterly meetings. So she only does basically she sets the agenda up, and then you're paying about 4 days per quarter. So and it's quite a good rate as well that she is paid. So I think all we need is a part-time clerk, and I don't think we have to. This is our registered office, can't we? Because Paul and Hayden, I think they've got this as their registered office, and we can always have our meetings in here. So we don't need a permanent base.
Thank you,
I was
councillor.
going to reiterate some of what councillor Franklin said, is because Sam's United Charities have got a clerk,
We already mentioned
Miss
this.
Kelly, no,
The same lady.
but she only does like 4 hours a week, and she works from home.
Mm.
And of course, a lot of the HR or personnel regulations won't actually affect somebody if they're doing that small number of hours. So I think we need to look into this with our HR, is it Peninsula still, is it? To see what we have to actually undertake for this, because my understanding is if they're doing less than 16 hours a month, a lot of the HR policies don't apply.
Okay, we'll come to that, but the question is, given the level of complexity and the grants and checking up on the grants and everything, is 16 hours a month going to be,
Nothing more than that.
it's going to be a lot more.
I think we sort of stolen my thunder to a certain extent. Now, we have to go into this with eyes wide open. This is not a small charity. It is a grant-giving charity as well. It is investments that are significant across a portfolio. And so there is financial information that needs to be managed. There is communication that needs to be managed. There is meetings, as you've said, that needs to be managed. So it's quite labour intensive. However, I'd like to separate out the first stage of this is actually getting the model set up. So we can decide what the model is and the depth and width of it. But I would be looking at whether we've got any potential of employing a third party to do all the legwork in terms of all the guidance, all the products, and paying for it from the Maddox charity, rather than councillors in this room being in charge of doing it, and it takes a year to get it done.
What gets me is we're talking about a part-time clerk, which will only say 4,000 towards 40 or 50,000 from this other company.
Exactly. Well, I'm not going down that route at all, Jeff. What I'm saying is that
I'm just saying the cost.
a third party to actually set up the charity, not to own the charity, but we need to get a whole host of documents and products in place, a grant-giving set of products, communications. So we're going to have a website. It's a £3 million trust that will be giving out grants at least once a year, probably more than that. That has all time involved in it, but it needs to be communicated. So it's not.
You mean like a startup?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially for a startup.
I mean, we've used locality. We will questionable in terms of quality, but something like that. Unless there are councillors in here who are saying they're happy to sign off the next 3 months of their lives to do a shed load of products.
I'm not on the computer. Oh, it's one.
So it will take months to get done.
Yeah, and I do think there are certain strategic decisions that we as the trustee need to make, because we've flirted with the idea of using an external organisation, and we'll come on to that later. But we've got to, in my mind, we've got to conclude on that, and we've got to set up some general principles, some strategic things. Yes, we agree we're going to employ a clerk, or whatever. We've got to agree some of the arm's length arrangements with the council, in terms of the staff, in terms of the facilities that the council provides and so forth. So I think there are some strategic things. And then I think we're talking about setting up this charity and having all of the processes and procedures and arrangements in place, and hiring an external organisation to help. Who could that be? Maybe it's the Charities Aid Foundation, maybe it's locality. We'll remember that our friends in Kent County, Kent Community Foundation, they wanted £15,000 just to set up the arrangement. and they are experienced practice. So all of this is going to take time and it's going to take money, but we've got to have a clear set of actions to be able to know that we're progressing in the right direction.
Oh yeah, sorry, just a minor point is obviously with this timeline or duration that it looks like that was a minimum 16 weeks. So an officer is going to be appointed around about 16 weeks, but then it could take them several weeks to work through the application with information coming backwards and forwards. So perhaps looking at about May or even June before.
We could be, we're in their hands and the response may be unfavourable and it might take another 12 months before this charity is set up. I'm optimistic that they will appoint a case officer before the 16-week period, and once the case officer gets into it, I would have thought they would be able to respond within a week or so. To the previous application, they responded very quickly within about 3 weeks, as I remember.
But I do agree with Councillor Chuka that we do need that help at the start, but when it's set up, it could bring it down to just 16 hours. If we could keep a lot of organisations do keep their employees under the threshold so they don't have to pay a lot of the on costs that you do have to pay. So, and that when it's up and running, that could be the case, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But I agree with Councillor Tudor, we need the support at the beginning.
Okay, so how are we going to progress that support? How are we going to, are we going to turn to the Charities Aid Foundation? Is that one?
Is it just the charity commission people they can?
I don't know that they do, but we can ask that question.
Doesn't, there's a lady lives in the town, lives in the high street, I've had a word with her, just to see that, just advise, what's it about, because she was involved with the charity people.
Right.
Well,
Could you refresh my memory in terms of Charity Aid Foundation, how their name appeared? Where did they?
Well, I think it came from two sources. I think it came from locality and it came from Councillor Ungerson, as I remember.
If I could say, I don't think the Charities Aid Foundation gives advice. I don't think they do. I think you need to look at their
I think it's
website.
all nothing, isn't it?
I think when we approached them before, they said until you've actually got a charity set up and now we've got an application number and everything in, I think it's worth asking them again, because they also offer banking services and we might want to be able to bank with them.
It is a bank.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Black.
The charity sector in Britain is pretty large, which means that there will be organisations like the Association of Charities or something like that, and you may find that on their website that they will have templates, which may help a great deal. They won't cover everything by any means, and the other thing is whether you can sort of finagle one of the bigger charities to do a bit of pro bono work for you. But that's the first route. There must be something like the equivalent of, just as we've got Calc and NELC and all these sorts of things. Because of the size of the charity sector, I'm sure there is at least one or two organisations who at least provide basic templates for you and even maybe a basic outline plan. But I'd be very surprised if there wasn't. What it is, I don't know.
Right, well, so what I'm hearing is that there are a number of potential routes. We need to get a list of all of those routes and assign people to explore them and to actually come back and report whether they can help or whether they can't help, if there's a cost implication or a time implication. Sorry,
I'm
Margaret.
just looking on here, the Charities Aid Foundation, it says, together we help you do more. We have learned from 100 years of helping charities and social enterprises to approach the future with confidence. That should never feel like you're alone. We're a charity too, so we know the pressures, so we've created a range of products and services to make it easier for you to achieve your goals, from accessing funding, banking and investments to impact consultancy for your organisation. So that sort of looks like they are people who can help us.
Yeah, I'm sure you can and will get advice from the Charity Aid Foundation. Once we've actually got the application in, and as the town clerk said, we've got a number, charity number, I'm sure that they are probably one of the first people we should be talking to.
Okay, so who's going to take the action to talk to the Charities Aid Foundation?
We've got to wait till we get the charity established and registered, haven't we?
We can contact them to find
Yeah,
out.
well, we've got to get in contact with them, haven't we?
No, did that,
Is that the same one?
no.
No, I think because we've registered with the Charities Commission, they've now given us a number, so the application is in progress. So I think the Charities Aid Foundation may be more willing to help us.
Yes.
That's the point. Okay.
I would be happy to talk to them, but I need to know more what to ask them. But I'm very happy to.
I know Councillor Green shared with me some work he's working on at the moment earlier today, and actually I think for me it's a very good crib list of things that we need to ask questions about. I've also found the Cranfield Trust. They provide pro bono services to charities, so there may be a parallel organisation to speak to.
We need more than one, don't we?
Yeah.
Others, I'm quite happy. I'll circulate this kind of thought that I had, which is basically setting out the main headings about the governance arrangements, the employer's policies, finance, grant awards, communications, and professional support. And then for each of these, I've listed a number of things, like if we were to say recruitment, where we need a job description for, and so there are, how many hours is that going to take, or do we have to pay somebody to do it, and how many weeks is it going to take? So it was me just trying to get my head around all of the tasks that were involved. And I've done a similar one, so that's for establishing the charity, and I've done another one for the operation, so that we can look at what's the estimated hours or the estimated cost. And I'll circulate all of this and people can fill it in and we can get kind of a view or a consensus. Because if we've got a view or consensus as to how many hours it's going to take to process, I don't know, 60 applications a year type of thing, and so forth, and we can make some basic assumptions. That might help.
But as a starting point, I'm very happy to talk to Charity Aid Foundation and find out what sort of advice and help we might be able to get from them.
Okay.
And I'll report back to you when I'm.
We also need to clearly understand what processes and procedures that we need to have to comply with law. It might be worthwhile asking the solicitor who's helping us with the application form. So I think if in the first instance, if we all submit a list to the town clerk as to how we think the lady down on King Street or wherever she is could help or whatever, and then we agree who's going to pursue those.
But
Sorry, so what are people doing? What's that?
there's two things. So one thing is
Councillor Gray's going to contact Charities Aid Foundation.
councillors are going to put in their options of who they're going to contact. So that's pooled, so we've got an option of people we're going to contact. But the second thing is, I think, which is the most vital thing, is the excellent work that Councillor Green's done needs to be circulated as soon as possible, so that we've got our set criteria before we go out to these organisations. Because with all due respect, if Councillor Franklin goes and sees this lady and says, oh yeah, we only want somebody, 2 hours a week, and then somebody else says, oh, well, we're going to need somebody 16 hours a week. So we need to get those criteria set. And then once we've got those criteria, we can go out to and I'm sure all of us know somebody who is connected with a charity or charities trust. So I think that's the most important thing to do, isn't it?
I don't think you can set the hours, really, because you might get 60 applications, you might only get 6 applications, so it'll be a floating hours. It's just that we just have to go by whatever the applications are at the time. But the lady I'm actually going to ask, a trustee of another charity.
Experience.
And you could gauge the number of applications by the amount of money that we've specified that we're going to each year. So KCF said about the amount of money, didn't they? They said it was going to be 3.5%. So that gives you the total of how much money there is.
100,000 a year.
And if we capped it up 5,000,
That's
that gives you a figure of how many applications that you can manage
There's only so much, isn't
to do that. So, and if as Councillor Tuker said, if we're doing that twice a year, you then split that number by 2. So say it was 22 applications. If that's done twice a year, that's going to be 11 every 6 months. And I think that is the sensible way to go ahead, because we don't just want a free-for-all. We've got to be able to rein it in and manage it carefully. And that's the important thing. Otherwise, as you said, we could have, a snowfall.
I think it's only one annual grant per year, isn't it? You can't come for double clonk on the same year.
Well, that's what I was saying about some of the strategic decisions that the trustee needs to make. Are we having 1, 2 or 3 or more rounds of grant applications in any one year?
So we've got that later on in the agenda.
You're right. All right.
So I'm having to contact the Cranfield Trust using that template. But we can't be prescriptive in terms of number of hours. It's just saying we're looking to employ a clerk, probably part-time, and we'll need procedures around that role. We're looking to have a grant-giving function, so we need procedures around that. So it's that sort of level.
Well, I'm quite happy to draft something for Girlings, the solicitors, to ask them for a proposal for putting in place the processes and procedures that we would need. So we've got a written proposal.
So we've got 4 channels of investigation set up already, haven't we?
Okay. Okay. All right, interesting. Right, the next item.
Are we proposing, can we have a proposal?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that.
Who's proposing?
No, nothing to say.
Can I just be clear exactly what's being proposed, please?
These people will contact those people.
Right, okay. People will contact other people.
Your people will talk to my people.
Well, I don't know about that. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Cass, Councillor Tuker, Cranfield, Breen, Girlings, Councillor Franklin, contact the individual that they know. Councillor Breen.
Well, I can be careful. I'll be involved with it all.
Okay,
Is Councillor Breen going to circulate
I'll do that. I'll do that this week.
his
Crib
crib sheet?
Well, I wouldn't call it. It's
outline.
estimate sheets for the establishment and the operation of the charity.
Well done. Right, well, I'll second whoever's proposing that.
So I think we're all in agreement there. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is the outsourced charity arrangements. And I think, we did have a robust discussion last time when a number of concerns were expressed, but there was an action to get Kent Community Foundation to come and make a presentation to us all. They came and we've had a series of follow-up questions. They've responded to those and they've basically reiterated their position. And I think there are some major concerns in terms of the irrevocability of the gift, not having the Mayor of Sandwich as a trustee of the organisation, not having control over the investment. And I think those are kind of red lines that kind of prohibit us from kind of committing to them. I think everybody is impressed about the way they go about grant applications and their management of grant applications, the number that they processed over the years. And it was interesting that they don't just give out to organisations, but they also gave out grants to individuals. But I think we've come to the stage where, unless there are other proposals as to how to engage with them, we can't really support committing £3 million in the manner that they've suggested. Councillor Cheetham.
Yeah, I think they've answered all the questions we've asked. The high level real concern about the money disappearing, I think in some ways I'm less concerned about that in terms of how they've answered it. However, I think we've got all the information that we need to inform a decision on whether we adopt KCF, either totality or the funding stream that they suggest as an alternative. So my proposal would be that we take this to the next STC meeting for a decision on whether we do or do not pursue KCF any further. I don't want to go through the weeds of all this, because I think all the data, for anybody who wants to read all the documents, there's enough there to form an opinion.
Yep, okay, thank you. Councillor Franklin.
I'd like to make recommendations to town council that we say that we don't want anything to do with this, we want to keep it as a local charity here based in Sandwich. So, because of the costings and everything, and very professional, can't think. But Georgina was a local woman, we all knew Georgina, and I think she wanted it here. I mean, some of us are members of other charities, quite large charities in Sandwich Trustees, and I think we're quite capable of running these charities. So I think we should say no, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Carter.
Oh yeah, the only thing that I would say, although I'm not proposing or going down the avenue of taking up KCF's offer, but from the discussions that we've had previously, and I think Councillor Wiles was one of the strongest advocates of this, I think we all need to be very careful. We all said that we didn't want to enact the STBF that we had before. So I think we need to be careful that there is some distance between the Georgina Maddox Charitable Trust and the Town Council and the STBF, because for me and probably for Jeff, I mean, we've seen it year in, year out, where there's been a very muddy situation, cloudy water of who's supporting who and where the money's going. And, you know, the only worry I would have is where possibly councillors are involved with running it and they don't make that differentiation between their council work and the other work. And I'm only putting that out there because that was what was discussed several times. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Councillor Carter has just said, because I do think it's important that this very large sum of money is allocated to applicants at arm's length, because I think that, I mean, we live in a small town, we know the people involved. It's all too easy to make judgments about the quality of a grant application on the wrong basis, because we know the people who are putting it forward and we know and we have views about it which we may not express explicitly, but might colour our judgment. And therefore I do think that I would advise this committee, and I hear what you're all saying, but I would advise you to listen to what the Kent Community Foundation does. I have to say that as somebody who has made grant applications to the KCF and has been, as a consequence of getting grants, this is for the Jubilee Centre, been very impressed by their support, their interest, their knowledge, and also about the additional things that you get as a consequence of getting a grant from the KCF. You know, you get involved in going to conferences about other funding opportunities, you meet other funders and so on, which I think would be enormously useful to sandwich organisations. So I do think that despite the cost, and I do take on board what you're saying about how we could run this on a much cheaper basis, but I think as a council we'd probably run it somewhat unprofessionally, relatively unprofessionally compared to this organisation, the Kent Community Foundation. But I do have two remaining questions about what they've said here. The first is that it is not clear, and I think it's because they won't ask the question, as to what their process of judgment is. How do they go about assessment? Where would the council's view of grant applications, where would that come into the deliberations? And it's interesting because Councillor Gray and I had an informal discussion this morning, just because we were meeting over breakfast, and Councillor Gray had a view that actually the council wouldn't be involved in this grants panel, and I had quite the opposite view, and I have no idea. And the second issue, which I don't think is clear from these answers, is because they talk about these two routes, the endowment route and the throughput route, whatever they call it, and they seem to have different procedures, because one of them, they seem to think that we would be more directly involved than with the endowment route, and I just didn't understand that. So I do think that if and when this report comes to the town council, those two questions should be asked of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Gray.
Could I say that I'm much less concerned than I was about the irrevocability of the procedure. I feel much more satisfied as to how it would work, and I am coming round slowly, actually, in favour of us considering this seriously. But I think there are still questions to be asked, particularly about their grants panel, and as to what power we would have in terms of grants, whether we could actually veto grants if we decided we didn't want them to make a grant. And there are various areas where I think I would like us to go back to them and answer these questions, and Councillor Anderson has mentioned it.
Yes, because I think.
But I do think that, personally, I think that generally, I think the idea of doing something with them is probably the right way for us to go. Whereas I definitely didn't feel that way when we first saw them.
Right, thank you, Councillor Margaret.
I just wanted to say, I'm here really to represent Georgina more than anything else, and she was very much one to do things herself. She did all her tax returns, she did all her buying her shares. I mean, and look what a jolly good job she made of it. And I don't think she would be happy for us to use and organise it. I think she would expect us to be doing it ourselves and be independent, because that's what she was, a very independent lady. So I just really want to reiterate that she was very independent. The other thing is, I'm involved with a charity that has had some grant money from KCM, and at times they've been promised money and then waited months for it. So I'm not entirely sure that you always get money at the time.
That hasn't been our experience at all.
Well, like I say,
Immediately.
I've been involved with this charity for the last 3 years, and they have had to wait. The last time was 6 months.
Okay, Councillor Chuka.
So we haven't got here a request to either support KCF or not. This is not the purpose tonight. So it is an important issue, and I'm similar to Councillor Gray in terms of my initial doubts. A number of those have been addressed. However, this is a principal decision rather than the nuts and bolts. And we can talk here for the next hour about this, but actually the decision point will be within STC. So I would prefer that we don't do that. I've already proposed that we have got the right information. However, there's a couple of questions further, and I think we should seek those answers. However, on the first one, it was clearly said that actually we could and would control the award of grants. So they would do all the work for us, but
Yes,
we
they do
would
the
be
due
the
diligence.
grant giving.
That's what I
channel.
understood,
So
but
that's very clear to me.
Councillor Gray
yeah,
didn't think that
Yeah,
was what
no,
was.
it is. It was clearly said. So I think that's one
Yeah.
question that has already been answered. But the second one I think is relevant.
Mm.
So could we, would you be happy to put another question back to them that
Yes,
I've
I've actually not.
just email it
If you
separately,
email it through.
Yes, and I go back to my proposal, which is, I think we've got enough, but
Right,
Yeah. Well, I'm actually totally against it, because what if we give them all the money, they take out 40,000 plus per annum to run our charity or Georgina's charity. We could keep it here, keep it like that. And also, I think last time we did the awards, we split the awards up between different people, didn't we? So if the applications come in and you know someone's doing an application, you just say, I know that one, so you don't get to choose. So which I thought was a very good idea.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right, sorry, Councillor Black, let's try and get.
Two points. If, I think I heard what Councillor Chuka heard about that we can have a heavy degree of involvement in this. However, the fact that some people did not hear that means that is one question we should ask. I think a second question should be relating to how speedy they are in payment. We've got two conflicting experiences, and I've no idea which one is more representative. Absolutely not. So let's ask them for the statistics, because they will have them. What's the speed of doing this? The issue about how much local control, I got the feeling that we set the rules, and they work to our rules, but we ought to be very, very clear exactly what degrees of freedom we have. So it's really a set of perhaps 3 or 4 questions rather than one question. And I'm sorry if I'm being pedantic about this, but people have got a misunderstanding and some genuine reservations about using them at all.
Yeah,
I haven't made my mind up at all, but we need to ask those 3 or 4 questions.
Okay, well, again, let's have them in. If I may say, finally, to bring this matter to a close, a few points. Number one, I think it's really important that we take our time over this and we don't rush into any decision, because what we've got to bear in mind is not what's going to happen over the next 6 months, but over the next 6 and 60 years.
And 60 years.
And 60 years.
600 years.
And 600 years. No, exactly. We don't want to set this up in a manner where the toll bridge, where it gets run, where it gets depleted, and it's really, it's just a slow train crash. We don't want to do that. The second point I'd like to make is that it's really important that this council remembers that this money was left to the organisations and groups within Sandwich. It is their inheritance from Georgina. We are here to give it out in our sole discretion as the town council. But I think maybe there should be some consultation with some of the organisations, because I'm sure many of them will be suspicious of what the town council may do over the years with their inheritance type of thing. So I think that's really important. And the third thing that I would say from my business experience over many years is that you never trust a new organisation with a big contract. You give them small amounts, small contracts, you build up the working relationship and so forth. And so I kind of like the idea that we could ask them to take on all of the grant giving reward, and we give them so much, even if it does cost a few £1,000s, even if it does cost a few thousand. No, they're saying if we would just give them.
I don't want nothing to do with them, absolutely, I'm not interested in them at all.
I understand your point of view.
Local person, local town, that's it.
But if we were to give them an amount of money and let them administer the grant process, it could take away the cost of employing the clerk.
Or 40 grand they're going to charge.
No, if we gave them 100 grand, they charge 15%. So if we gave,
But they want the 3 million, don't they?
they would like, as a business,
Given.
but maybe we should be starting,
Can
sorry.
I read the alternative flow-through option to you all, just so that
Yes,
everyone's
please,
completely
that'd
clear?
be most helpful.
The alternative flow-through option, because from what I'm hearing, the endowment option is not palatable to many people. The alternative flow-through option, if you prefer to retain ownership of the capital, we can offer a flow-through option. This allows you to make an annual donation, which we then distribute in a full through a managed grant programme. 100,000 flow-through donation would include a 15% contribution to Kent Community Foundation, 15,000, enabling 85,000 to be awarded in grants. Each donation, whether an initial gift or a future top-up, includes this 15% contribution to cover the full administration and delivery of your grants. This money is not invested, it's money in, money out, and is well suited to fund holders who want to see immediate benefit to their chosen causes. You can be as involved as you wish in the grant-making process, including established a dedicated panel which we would support and facilitate.
Okay, thank you, I think that
That sounds a lot better,
more palatable,
much more palatable.
No, I still don't know.
understand.
Yeah.
Nothing, I want a sandwich.
Okay, all
Sandwich
right,
run, sandwich people.
very finely, councillor Gray.
Can I just raise one point, quite different point? And I've been asking some of my former colleagues in the law about whether there are any tax implications and problems with the council having been given this bequest free of inheritance tax and free of capital gains tax. If it now passes it on to a third party, which is what this is about, will this give any rise to inheritance tax or capital gains tax?
I can't
The
imagine if
only
it's a charity.
The only advice I can get is that generally there should be no problem, and typically there should be no problem. And no one is prepared to say to me, there is no problem. So we must, at some stage, talk to our tax advisors and say, would there be, we need clearance that this would not give rise to any tax problems.
That's a good point.
And if we're going to do it, the sooner we do that, the better.
All right, okay, thanks, everybody.
I'll just ask one last point. I suggested 3 questions by the town clerk's response. I think some of those have already been asked. So are we going to repeat the same questions in more detail or not?
Well, if you've got questions, let's send them into the town
That's
clerk.
fine, thank you.
And if we've already got the answer, town clerk can give you the written answer.
And if it's fresh in your minds, we therefore set a deadline of doing it by this Friday. I don't want this stretching to the Christmas break coming up. Because if we're going to take a paper to the next STC in January, we want to have cleared all people's doubts in terms of questions. And let's Let's have a debate there.
Will the final decision then be made at the next meeting? Because this has been going around for about 2 or 3 months now, going around in circles. I think it should.
I don't know.
We can finish the branch on.
We need to wait and see, we
Yeah,
can't, like I say, I'd sooner we take our time on this, because it's
Well, I don't want to do that.
a long-term stuff. It's a long-term stuff. Okay. Can we move on to the next item then?
What did we propose? Well, there was no request into, no recommendations in.
No, go around circles.
I've got, I've got, KCF has answered the questions put to them, there's enough information now to make, I'm going to change it to nearly enough information to make an informed decision on whether to proceed with them. Any supplementary questions should be emailed to the town clerk by the end of the week. It's proposed that this is put on the agenda for the next STC meeting to decide whether or not to go forward with KCF or to establish an independent.
Okay, so we need, who's going to prepare the paper for,
Well, I'll propose that we do
who's going
exactly
to prepare the paper for the town council meeting?
what's going on in the paper.
I think that needs to have a balanced view in it.
I would prefer if it was done independently of any councillor,
I'm happy to collect.
so that there's no bias.
Yeah.
And because in this chamber this evening, there's a distinct, well, I'm sorry to say it, councillor Franklin,
There's a spectrum.
a distinct no, and then there's sort of possible yeses over here. So I would prefer the paper is drafted by an independent person.
Okay, and do we need to have it at the next town council meeting, or is it something that we can leave until February or whenever?
I think February feels better for me because doesn't this committee come back together
We've
before
got a
February?
meeting on the 7th of January, according to you.
Yes, is that MCMC, not
It
GM?
says date of the next meeting.
Oh, right, okay.
I may have misunderstood the difference between MCMC and GM.
There are, yes, well, yes, yeah, we had that discussion earlier today. So it's the MCMC when that next meets, because if it meets before, in January, I would suggest we come back here because we've got those answers back and we're equipped to take on the point about not rushing it.
Yeah.
Because we are going to have 5 to 6 months before we'll be a charity in any case.
Correct.
Possibly.
Or longer, or not at all.
Oh. 19th GMCT, I must have something completely wrong, it's HR on the 7th.
Yes, it is.
So,
So it's not on the 7th.
the 19th,
No, that's the GMCT, which I question why we even have that now, because we haven't got charity established.
well, do we want to change that to MCMC?
That would seem sensible.
Propose that?
Have to propose that we meet on the 19th of January. But ideally, it's limited to the discussion of the KCF. There may be other things that drop in, but
Well, I think kind of the processes and procedures and the establishment of the charity is major.
yeah, we have to fall back on all we've done in any case. Yes.
On the 19th, have we got New Zealand volunteers?
7th.
Oh, January, sorry, we're not,
You have the wrong one.
wrong year. Yeah, well, getting there.
So what date was it, the 19th?
19th.
That's a Monday, yeah?
I'd like to propose that we do have the next meeting on the 19th of January. Somebody have to say that?
Yeah, second.
And, yeah, and subsequently the paper going to the town council will be prepared by the independent town clerk.
So
or
if we
staff.
vote on,
Yeah.
have to vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Next up is the interim grant award process. Members to consider the status of the interim grant award process, the learning from the first round of awards, and to discuss the arrangement for the next round of awards. So, I think there is a report out that asks a number of questions. What went well? What didn't go quite so well? What should we do to improve it? Should we have another round? Anybody like to start? Okay, Councillor Chuka then, we'll go around the table. So, you've seen all of the questions.
Yeah. So, I think the one thing that we should do is congratulate ourselves on running a scheme from scratch quickly. We did the usual thing, which was a political approach that central government tends to do, is to say a date when we're going to do something, and we're going to run around madly to deliver it to that date. So we said we would make awards by the end of November, and then we realised that we actually had to do quite a bit of work around it, and we rushed around. So I think we should thank us, congratulate ourselves in terms of the amount of effort and those that were willing to take part. I'd like to thank them. But on the other side, I think there are some lessons to learn, and we should learn them. But the one thing that I would say is we need to be very clear about roles in the process. So the one thing that, from a personal perspective, I realised that we had got the applications in, but we hadn't agreed who was going to actually manage the process. And I did step in and do that, but that was almost 2 days of personal time that I hadn't expected. So I felt a bit disappointed about that, but taking one for the team, I did, and it worked. And people stood up to do their assessments. Next time, we shouldn't do it as rushed. We can build in timescales. If we decide to go, for example, my preference will be awards twice a year, and we can run a scheme in the spring, and then we can run one in the autumn. There is a supplementary question about that, is if we award an organisation once in the year, we should be fairly critical, maybe even consider excluding them from applying for another award in the same 12-month period to be discussed. So that's my start of the 10. So we could run a scheme from March to May, which is a few months away, and then from September to November, which mirrors what we did this year.
Okay. Anybody else with comments?
There was some confusion over applications and the process of getting applications in. So I had a couple of organisations that contacted me and said that it had happened and they hadn't been notified about it at all. So I was just wondering what the process was for the application forms going out. Had we actually undertaken any publicity?
Loads of publicity.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of publicity and posters and so forth. And it was up to the organisations to download the application forms from the homepage of our website.
So it was on the website, it was shared by a number of councillors on Facebook on a number of occasions. It was in the STC magazine, it was on posters publicly. I don't think there's much more we could have done unless we actually had mail-shotted organisations, which I don't think is really, in terms of the amount of effort, sensible to do. That's not, we should go out and fish for applicants.
I do think we should perhaps let the schools and colleges know.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
That was the two that I was talking about, was the schools actually.
Yeah, because they.
Also the timeline, I think we've got some preset timelines already. So taking on board what Councillor Chuka said, I too would think twice a year, but I would perhaps bring them back slightly further, particularly the very first one, because our timelines are really the events in the town, aren't they? Is one of the main things that's happening. Now, for anybody like myself who's been organising a summer event, you really need the money a lot earlier in the year. And also, for instance, like the Christmas lights, you'd also need the money slightly earlier then. So I think it would be better just to bring them back, say 2 months earlier on those. So in say February time, and perhaps in September or August.
I understand what you're saying. I think the important thing from our point of view is to do it at a time which has got some certainty, which suits us.
Yes.
So if we've got year end or we've got other civic events or stuff like that, that's going to impinge on the availability of councillors to work, and we should work outside those, and the onus is on the organisations to be organised and to anticipate. So I think we should do it to suit ourselves, not to suit one or two or a small number of organisations.
Can I just add though, you've just actually stepped into the trap that I said about earlier, because you said if we have got year end, so you're saying that because of the council having year end, that is going to affect, and that's how we're running STBF, you see. This is what I'm saying. It's not, there's no arm's length between this money being given out and us working as a council. And this is what's happening. Can you see that? We should be doing it for the people in the town. You said earlier it was for the organisations in the town.
Yeah.
Which should really coincide with, for instance, 2 schools didn't apply, they didn't get an application at all. But so there's the school year to think about, and there's also the events year to think about. And that's what I'm trying to put over. You said we should do it, the inference that it's we, the council, should do it when we wish to do it. But really this is for the organisations and groups. The council shouldn't be saying, oh, well, because we've got year end, we can't do grants. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand your point. Yes, I do understand your point, and I'm sure the organisations would understand that, you know, there are obligations that we as a council have, and as the will says, it's in our sole discretion. And so the school year, whether they get awarded the money in June or whether they get awarded the money in January, you know, it's up for them to organise their timing of their applications against, you know, the spend. So I understand your point. Let's agree to differ and let's move on.
Yeah, but just as an example, just the Sandwich in Bloom. So Sandwich in Bloom, it wouldn't be any big good giving them a grant. This, I'm just trying to explain it. It wouldn't be worth giving Sandwich in Bloom a grant in May, would it? That's what I'm trying to put over. So I'm not being awkward.
No, but we've just given them a grant in December, haven't we?
I know, which is.
So let them have another one, you know, 6 months later, and then they can plan for the winter planting.
They can't have 2 grants in 12 months.
Right. 3 or 4 points looking at the practicality. If there are groups that feel they've been missed out, the ones I think we'd be referring to are large organisations, sometimes with professional managers, and you know, you'd think they would be attuned slightly differently. Be that as it may, if we need to have more publicity to certain areas that felt they've missed out, fine. But they have got professional management teams running those organisations, and they are big organisations. Looking now at the practicalities here, I think a very helpful series of questions. I did feel for the ones that Vicky and I did, the absence of any questions about health and safety were a bit of a problem, because we were concerned, obviously, one of the charities has got water, disabled people, and no idea of what sort of things they would do in the event of an emergency. Clearly, others have got very developed plans. That's great, but I do think we ought to perhaps beef up the health and safety bit a little bit here. I didn't quite understand the question about support for the locality and being supported by locality to a higher degree. I didn't quite understand the question. I'm not sure how, if we are the trustee, we can really delegate a lot of the work to people who are not trustees. I may have misunderstood the question, but I don't think we can. It's a question of how much time we allocate, how much time we plan. but I'm not sure we can do too much on that. Finally, just the last question, did the organisations where we said, tell us a bit more information, and we hope we'll be able to grant things. I was thinking particularly of the Angling Club. Did they come back to you?
Sorry?
Did the Angling Club come
Yes,
back?
no, both of,
They've both come back
yeah,
now.
yeah, all
And
good.
they're all,
Yeah,
they're all, well, that's really good news. So we have a 100% success rate with applications? No, sorry, with our decisions.
Yes,
So, and I think that should be publicised.
it will be, so I'll come on to that, but Councillor Unkelson was trying to.
Right, yeah, I've been around the table.
Yes, I'd like to address the fact that we had 70,000 to spend, but we actually granted £41,794. And that's, I think, indicative of two things. Possibly that there wasn't enough publicity for some organisations, but as Councillor Black has said, they happen to be organisations where one might expect them to be on the ball about it. But I think more importantly is that we had £70,000 to spend and we put a cap on of 3,000, although some organisations went up to 5,000 and were granted 5,000. So given 70,000, we were expecting a very large number of applications, which we didn't receive. And my view is that that is probably a reflection of the number of organisations in Sandwich who are interested in this kind of funding. And that we should very seriously, or you should very seriously consider raising the cap or being much more flexible about the cap on grants. I don't know whether there was anybody, any grant application that, and it is, I probably should find out, that actually put in for core costs like hiring somebody, or paying rent, or funding utility bills, that kind of core costs that, that the term core costs cover. And if they had put in the core costs, they would have put in for much more, because 5,000 or 3,000 isn't going to get you very far with core costs or typical core cost applications. So I would say that given the low amount, the relatively low amount that was actually granted in comparison to what was actually available, I think that you should consider raising that cap considerably.
Right, thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Franklin. He's already had a go on this.
Oh, okay. No, I was just thinking, I think we've got to reflect that we are elected in May, and the mayor's in May, so I think the grant making's got to reflect the civic year. So I think the first grant after mayor making should be like June, and then after election be June, and say if you're going 6 months after the June. So, because some of the councils might not be standing, in a year's time, or even after the new mayor, I think I would want to be a juggling about. So I think it should be like the first awards should be like the first meeting, like June, and do it like that, so it reflects the civic year.
Okay. All right, thank you. Final comment, and then I'll make some comments, and then we'll close.
I was just going to say, the cap was actually up to 5,000, and we did agree to the council, but 5,000 was a potential claim. And actually, if you develop, so the applications that were made were driven by the applicants, and the amount of money they asked for varied from as low as £250 upwards. So, but if you took 5,000 and they were all 5,000, you could only therefore, out of 70,000, have made 14 awards if they all come. So, for me, I think it was a sensible cap. I'm not sure running costs actually is part of the feasibility. So there are ways in which we need to look at it in terms of the future. But all I'm just going to say, we talked a little bit about the frequency. I think it should be twice a year, and we can be flexible about where we move it. But March to May takes into account that actually you're within the administrative year, so that's the first thing. If you looked at June, etc., you actually have to run the scheme. It's not awards, you have to run the scheme, and it takes about 3 months sensibly. We did it in 2 months, and that was really going at full pelt. It's about 3 months to run the scheme. The point made about timing of it, well actually, Christmas lights, they'd come in the first one in the year. Sandwich in Bloom would come in the one at the end of the year. So I agree with your point. We, as trustee, design when we want to do it, taking into account all things like if we ran it across August, do we want to do it in August? When many councillors, albeit they are trustees, could be on holiday. So these are things we as a group of people have to sensibly agree. March to May is sensible because actually it's 6 months from when the last awards were made, which is November. And for me, that's the right way to do it, twice a year with a 3-month span for each of the schemes.
Mhm.
And then we can look at further detail below that is, can you award it twice? If you award a second award, do you have to be a bit more critical about it?
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the town clerk, because you were at the centre of the administration of this, so have you got any comments on this?
I wasn't actually, I would say Councillor Schuper was at the centre of it because I was on holiday.
Yeah. That's it, I was left right in the driving seat.
Right. So a few points for me, if I may. First up, I think core costs are included. I think that they are, and I think for most of the organisations in Sandwich, they don't have the same extent of core costs and utility bills and stuff like that because they're just hiring venues and so forth. So just to address that, from one of the things I'd like to stress is that this was an interim grant award process. And I think going forward, I think because we're going to have the same applicants coming forward year after year, maybe we want to think about a bit more long-term commitment so that an organisation knows that they've got a commitment for the next 5 years and it's renewable after 3 years or something. So I think we need to think seriously about that. The other thing I would suggest is that maybe we should be exploring some kind of database, charity grant database to absolutely run this, because all of this shuffling around with PDF papers and so forth, and this is one of the things that I think these professional grant giving organisations do have. They do have software to manage this, and we did have an instance where one application kind of slipped through the net and so forth, but we managed to catch that. So those are some of the things, because it becomes quite unwieldy when you think about all of the information that these organisations need to upload. So things like uploading their constitution every time, once every year they have to send in, it's just putting a lot of emphasis on us, whereas maybe we should, if we are going to be this professional grant giving organisation, that we do have the systems and tools to back it. Okay, some food for thought. So that's been useful. I think there's a few comments there for us to think about. Is everybody happy? Do we need to vote on anything? Can we just move on? All right. The next item, I think I've just kind of misplaced my agenda now. The next item was the memorial rewards, never to consider suggestions made.
I'm afraid I didn't have anything other than what was from the previous clerk, really.
Yeah, well, that's where I think if you had the minutes that I prepared, I think the notes that I prepared from the previous meeting that I sent through, the following items were agreed as worth further consideration, and there were 4: a memorial area opposite the No Name shop, a graveside plaque, memorial scholarships, and the location and use of her piano. The following items were dismissed: flowers in containers in the Guildhall, moving the key car park is too expensive, and putting up finger signposts around town. And there was another suggestion to replace the rope walk benches that we didn't actually get round to discussing at the last
What we don't do.
meeting. We don't tell them. Okay, so this memorial area opposite the name shop has been suggested. Is there any update on that?
There is. I've had a couple of conversations with BBC and they have now reversed their initial position, which was that they would only lease it to us on a long-term basis and we'd have to pay, to now saying that they will enter into discussions about transferring across to STC, potentially at nil cost.
Okay.
So that's where we are. I'm trying to follow it up with the head of assets. I emailed him at the start of this week. That then gives us the authority then to decide what it might be used in the future. I've also separately spoken to Sandwich in Bloom, so if it comes across to the council, there could be an interim measure in terms of just keeping it in. I mean, it looks great now because actually it's clean and tidy. That might not last long. So that then gives us the opportunity from a charity perspective to consider about whether, for example, at Peppercorn Rent, it becomes the Georgina Maddox space.
Okay, but and then also whether we need to get, some suggestions for the scheme.
Yes, yeah, and you might employ a designer, the charity might employ a designer to come up with something. And I have spoken to the owner of the property, the pathway that runs through the middle.
Yeah.
And I've outlined my views in terms of what might happen, and I said we'd make sure we'd keep him engaged in it.
Okay. All right, Margaret.
It's a lovely area and I think it could be really very suitable because it's centre of town. Georgina was always here or there playing her flute and what have you. So I think it's probably the right place. I was on bus today coming through Ash and they've got their really nice little garden by the co-op there. I don't know if it's on the opposite corner to the Checkers. And they've got, it's a little bit enclosed and they've got benches and trees and although it's not the right thing, it's worth looking at to see how they've done it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's about the same sort of size.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we'll wait for feedback from Councillor Tuke on that. The next thing is the graveside plaque. That would be subject to agreement with St Clements. Is anybody happy to enter into discussions or has there been any progress on that?
She's got the
She has, yeah.
She's got the plan.
It's got Jack, you were on it.
Yes, because
That's where the rashes are.
I think that's perfect, it is.
Do we need to do any more?
I
Do we need
don't
to
think so, because what else are you going to put? The
Yeah.
same thing.
put a cat beside it?
We could put a cat, we could have a metal cat.
A metal cat,
Yeah,
the
it
fruit.
is. I think it'd be nice to put up some flowers or.
I think we should, the charity should make sure that's done.
I think something at Christmas and something for her, either the anniversary of her death or her birthday.
Okay, well, let's do all three.
All three, which is March, August and Christmas.
Okay, the next suggestion, a memorial scholarship for music and maths awarded through the grant process.
So I think that we do need to push that. I think.
Yeah, and I'm happy to start, so I've got meetings with 2 headmasters in the next couple of weeks. I'm happy to trail that as something we're considering if you have to say that is something we're willing to investigate.
Well, yeah, I think everybody's supportive of that idea. It's just the practicalities as to, is it for an accomplished musician or is it to pay for a music teacher to go into schools, at junior school? At what level is it pitched? Is it to buy instruments for the junior school? And I can say my daughter was given a cello at her junior school and went on to play. She went to grade 8 and it was only because the school gave her the cello.
I think you'd have to contact the heads and ask for their.
Ask their input, yeah.
Designers.
And it's like,
Yes.
it's like Sam Manwood had the Army Cadet, that had a band and the town council used to buy their instruments. So they got loads of instruments that we purchased and we don't, if they had like a music teacher, get the band going, you need part-time.
I could possibly help a little bit as I'm trustee of and governor of the technology school. And what you said, Councillor Breen, is correct. Is for the technology school, it is the case of buying the equipment. But for the case of the Manwoods Band, which when I was mayor a year ago, I inquired about, why isn't there a band? Can we assist with trying to get a band going? It was actually because they didn't have any musical teacher who would come in and volunteer to support 4 hours a week to do the band. So you've got two different scenarios with those two schools. And as I say, one of them I'm a trustee of, so I know that one. And the previous one was when I made a request and said, is there any way we can get the Manwoods cadet band back going? So it would need individual discussion with both the.
Well, I think it's important that we actually do something about this and not just talk about it. So it would be good, Councillor Chuka in these meetings with the school, and you as a trustee of the school, and anybody else who's got any suggestions or connections with schools or whatever. Councillor Augustine.
I was going to say, I don't think we should think about supporting music in terms of a memorial for Georgina. I think we should think in terms of supporting music as part of the Maddox Fund mission, because she was a musician and she supported a lot of music in the area. So I would prefer us not to talk about, instruments in memory of Georgina. I would prefer us to talk about, or you to talk about a mission. Part of the criteria for the allocation of grants is that it can go to schools and individuals who wish to promote music, and they should put in applications for instruments.
I think the grant giving policy already kind of covers that at the moment. It is at the moment. But
if it's a scholarship, it wouldn't be capped, would it?
Well, if it's a scholarship and we need to hire a music teacher to come and give piano lessons downstairs in reception on Georgina's piano, and the school identifies the children to come along, and we have to pay that music teacher more than 5,000, I'm sure, we would be interested in and receptive to that, but we've got to have a proposal in the first instance. And okay, so we've got a couple of actions there. What about maths? Because it's been suggested there would be a maths scholarship as well.
Teachers.
How would that work?
I don't know. I was thinking more of.
I don't think it really works, does it?
It probably doesn't work. It's just that she was so passionate about maths. She kept going back to night school to do various exams and things that, it was one of her passions. That was.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Yeah, from experience, if the scholarship thing didn't work, both the schools have awards ceremonies, and there's an award for whoever. So, for instance, there's a Malcolm Waite Award for engineering at Sandwich Technology School. So all the pupils try to work their hardest to try and win that award because it's seen as an achievement. So perhaps with the maths or with the maths and music, awards could be made, which is a minimal amount of money, but it is perhaps like some sort of award statue or cup that can be purchased, and it can be the Georgina Maddox.
Transfer it to a memorial award.
A memorial award. I think that would be more appropriate.
Yeah, even if it's just a token, a book token for £20, it's something for people to put on their application and so forth.
The History Society do it obviously for history at the schools.
Okay, well again, if we can get some firm proposals, that would be good.
Yeah, I was going to say, higher education is now so expensive.
Well, that's.
Exactly.
But I was wondering whether you might not think about establishing a memorial scholarship to go to a university to read music or maths.
That was one of the thoughts that I had, paying their
their fees.
fees or card
contribution.
fees,
From
yeah.
their meetings.
Yeah.
Again, I think these are all proposals that could come to Maddox, and for the full trustee to, consider, yeah. And it's the location and use of a piano. Again, if there's any suggestions on that, I was going to say we should put it in the magazine, but I think it's already been.
That piano's worth 18,000.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not worth
No,
anything.
no,
No, but if you went out to buy one like it, that's.
Oh,
what
it's
it's
very
for.
true.
Is it?
Very.
No,
And yet she did.
I've spoken to, the property master has spoken to, property manager has spoken to people, and I've spoken to people who I know, and he said basically we'll have to get somebody to take it away.
Yeah. That's what it's left in the bungalow. Because when they strip the bungalow out, with a solicitor, you know, to all of it, to all of it, and that's the reason why they left at the end of it, because it's not worth it.
No, because they couldn't get it out.
No, well, no, it costs too much, it wasn't worth it.
So, let's close on this now.
Yeah, sorry, just on the piano, could I, because it's been sitting downstairs for now 2 years, could I ask that the property manager has done some investigations, that to a committee meeting, we have a report from him on the condition of it?
I think he has always done that.
It doesn't, I think.
Have we? Well, we certainly didn't get a decision, but it's still sitting there, because my personal view, having looked at it only a couple of days ago, it's in really poor condition. I don't think it is
Yeah.
retrievable. We shouldn't have it just sitting in the council's reception area. If it isn't if it has no monetary value at all, we should arrange for it to be disposed of.
Yeah.
Regards to the emotion around it,
Yeah.
it's pointless. It's got a.
It's a lot of work there.
Okay, all right, so if you can ask the property manager to bring a paper.
He might have to just take one out again, but he's
Right.
He's
already.
already done it.
Yeah.
Refresh it.
So what are we going to,
We need to not just have it sitting there and.
so where's he taking this paper to?
The council, full council.
Okay.
No, I said to people, didn't want it. None of the churches wanted it, no one wanted it.
Okay, thank you very much for your input on that agenda item. Let's move on to the next one, which is finance. We've received a report from the finance manager, Harris Allday.
Yep.
And we've now got valuing the portfolio at some 3.166 million.
Yeah.
So, and then the
Sorry, the cash, I didn't get the report until after the paper's gone out, but it's £84,240.02.
and have we paid out any of the grants yet?
No.
I did get that bit now.
Takes me back to,
So we've got 40,000 in, when the grants are paid out, we will have 40,000 left in the council holding 40,000. So maybe in the future, we need to consider asking the investment manager to, to draw down some of the dividends received or whatever for the next round of grant awards, whenever that will be.
sorry, that's just triggered. I did want to mention in the previous item about the grant giving. So we've awarded grants. We need now to follow that up by actually giving the grants out. As part of the process, we said in the guidance that funding is usually paid in one instalment within 1 month from accepting the offer and terms. So we have to get out offer and terms and then transfer of money. We need to advise that they need to give us records of how the grant is spent. They need to submit a short end of project report. So there's a number of things that need to be done around this. And I'm happy to work with the town clerk on that, but I'm just slightly worried about timescales, because if not, people will start saying, where's my money?
Can I just add that as a trustee of the Jubilee Centre, we are going to start spending the money, because we've got that sort of sum in our bank account on the assumption that it's going to come. But we need to get this fireproofing done ASAP, so we've got to do it before Christmas, basically.
Well, we have offered the grant,
We have.
so we need to have a formal acceptance. I just need to send a letter.
Letters of
saying-
acceptance, which should be signed and sent in duplicate, one copy signed and returned, and then the money's paid.
All of the provisos of the things that they need to do
I
are.
think I can
Yes,
produce
those are
a,
in the.
because
in the
it's all
letter
in,
of
it's all in
acceptance.
the, it's in the locality documentation, it's all very clear. So it really is a bit of a cut and paste job, really.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, as long, I don't think we need to get too detailed.
No,
These are the letters, these are the terms, please send me a letter
Yeah,
back.
signed and accept, yeah. Okay, so that's good that we've got a healthy amount of money. And the final item is the action log. And I don't think there is anything outstanding on that really, as I.
what was the final action?
Either way, fine and setting, yeah.
So the ones in progress were the terms and reference comments from the committee collated and fed into the draft document for the full council meeting, recommending for adoption. So that's with you, Town Clerk, for the terms of reference. The next item is co-option, future co-option to include a processing scope. I think as we move forward, we've got Margaret as a co-optee on this management committee. We ought to think about other people that we should co-opt in. It's been said that there are people around the town, Councillor Franklin, who are experienced in charities and so forth. So maybe we should consider getting somebody with charity experience to help us. And the other thing that we might want to consider is in terms of co-optees are, because this is, the inheritance is really belongs to the organisations, should a representative from the organisations be party to this management meeting? Food for thought.
On the other little committee, do you remember where where the former head of man was?
Yeah.
Would he be suitable or not? Because lastly,
Well, I think we need somebody with charity expertise. And I'm just trying to think of his name, he lives in the bus type
Yeah,
of thing.
somewhere.
He was in the Sondeck Association.
yeah, and quite a few other charities, where there was churches involved as well.
Yeah, but, we ought to just think about that for a future meeting. And then the final open action was employing a clerk for the Maddox Fund should be a priority, a recommendation for the council. So that was for the town clerk and myself. So I think, we're kind of in agreement that we probably do need somebody, but the starting block is a job description.
So I did some digging on this because we did actually agree a job role in this committee back in June. And we agreed it would be submitted to the extraordinary meeting, the full council in July, but that didn't happen. So we have got something on the blocks already that we've discussed in this meeting. So, and I found a copy of the document.
I'll remember, thank you.
Well, I do remember I did some digging.
Thanks to Councillor Marie who's joined the meeting.
Yeah, apologies, had to work day, hence why the lovely Councillor Black's taken my place is taking my vote today. So just wanted to point out, as I say to Councillor Green, that obviously we won't be able to agree to hire a clerk for the charity until we agree what we're doing with the KCF, obviously.
Yeah, we've already discussed.
Yeah, I've been listening to it while I've been driving.
Okay. So finally, the date and time of the next meeting, we've got Wednesday, the 7th of January.
No, 19th of January.
Sorry, 19th.
19,
Apologies.
Monday the 19th.
Yeah, Monday the 19th.
Okay, if there's nothing else, let's close the meeting.
Sorry. Just the final one, all these, the I didn't get a proposal and a seconder for like paying over the money after we've got the letter of acceptance.
I don't think we need a proposal, we've committed,
If it's financial, you should. If
I
it's
think we should.
financial,
Yeah.
I'm happy to propose that one. You should, yeah, anything to do with financial.
Yeah, but the council has agreed with full council for grants to be given, hasn't
We
it?
have already, yes.
Yeah. So I don't think it needs,
Okay.
yeah.
Would it hurt just to have it there?
Anything goes wrong, blame the clerk.
If you feel more comfortable with
I
it,
think
so.
I would rather, yes, because.
Right,
you're actually
okay.
dishing
I'll
out records.
Yeah.
Second it.
Okay, we're all voting.
Right, we're all voting.
We're all green.
Just to let you know, also the verbal update from town clerk and six signatories authorised. Well done to the councillors who are present. Councillor Wiles still hasn't sent me a code. So there we go.
That's for the Harris all
I'm
vote.
afraid that's naming and shaming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
With fish and chips.
No, I have no clue yet, so I don't know, we don't do it, we're going to bed. I'm gonna get it.
You need to.
Yeah.